Good day, good people. Today is the 3rd of sometime, August 2011. You're listening to freethinkradio.com. This is Lifting the Veil, and I'm your host, Carrie Lee. For all of you that have been waiting anxiously for this, yes, I do have Dean Clifford, who is a sovereign, on the show to discuss all things sovereign under the regime. So, without further ado, Dean, how are you? And thank you for joining.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and thanks for having me today.
No problem. Now, as a lot of I've been posting it like crazy, your channel for Free Manitoba, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a couple messages that I've been given, or a message right now, and then I have a question I would like to get out of the way quickly. If anybody hasn't seen the Free Manitoba site, I suggest that you check it out. It's the channel on YouTube, Free Man, and then Itoba. So capitals on Freeman, and then lowercase itoba. This is a really fantastic channel that if you've ever had any questions to sovereignty, all the answers are right there for you, and you just have to take the time to listen. Now, a friend on Facebook, Mick, had sent me a message saying, "Hey, Carrie, here's my story for Dean. Hope it isn't too long." I did actually have to whittle it down a bit. I don't half waffle on when I get started. Hi, Dean. My name's Mick, and I live in England, but please don't hold that against me. I just wanted to thank you for the works you've put into exposing the corruption and trickery the so-called Crown Police, courts, and government uses to try and continually beat us down mentally, financially, and spiritually. I've been looking into sovereignty and common law for around a year. Now, with one or two failed attempts at using it correctly under my belt. Anyway, I accidentally came across, or as I like to think, guided towards your videos on YouTube around 2 to 3 weeks ago, and was literally blown away by the information you shared. It was as if my soul was screaming at me that this was the real shit, and it just resonated through my entire being. Like Carrie, I couldn't sleep after watching them, as the energies I received were far too intense to even think about sleep that night. You were right in your video when you said, your head literally feels like it's going to explode with the endless possibilities. Anyway, it wasn't long before I had the opportunity to try it out for myself. What if any effect it had? So I got the opportunity to test it out that weekend. A friend and I had pulled into town, which is Middlesbrough, UK, to get some supplies for a festival we were on our way to, and we pulled outside to my usual sandwich shop. We were inside for under a minute, and when I came out, there were 2 armed police officers waiting in their patrol jeep. As I walked out, one of them shouted to me, "Whose van is that?" To which I replied, "It's mine. It belongs to my company." Both of them immediately jumped out of their jeep and approached me in a very purposeful way. My van was parked in a restricted area, they told me, and began demanding my details, to which I replied with the usual, am I being arrested, and am I obliged to answer your questions? Anyway, he started to get a bit pissed with me, so I decided that seeing as I'm fully insured, taxed, and with a valid MOT certificate, I would give him my details, adding that it was under threat and duress. They were armed after all. Oh, where did I go? I just missed it. Where is it here? Cool. I hate that when you click and it just jumps. They were armed after all. Where am I? Oh, it's a really long one too. Will not be entering into contract with you today, which he replied, "What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about." So I replied, "Okay, if I don't know what I'm talking about, how do you know what I'm talking about?" Anyway, he didn't like that, but looked at his partner, nodded his head, and then walked away, telling me to move the van before it was towed away, and over in under 2 minutes tops, no ticket, nothing. Now, Cleveland police are not known for being the nicest bunch of people out there, and this struck me as very odd indeed. I usually end up antagonizing them enough to spend at least a night in the cells, and this was not like any other police pull I've ever had. Anyway, the weekend after, I attended a private outdoor party on a local farmer's land, and the police came at about 3 a.m. to try and close down the noise due to complaints. There were no complaints. The nearest house is 2 to 3 miles away minimum. We only had the music on low, so it couldn't disturb the farmer's livestock. Anyway, they attempted to question and search everyone present, starting with me, I'm 6'3" and weigh around 220, so I do stand out a bit in a crowd. So when they attempted to take my details, I gave them my name again, followed by the sentence, I am the administrator for that account, and any contract you want me to enter into with you will be on my terms, not yours. And before they had finished even writing my name down, they looked up at me, then at each other, and then walked away and started using their bully boy tactics on some of the other guests there. Anyway, a couple of them who had seen the way I had interacted with the police told them the same thing and got the exact same result I had. The ones who gave names were taken over to the police van and searched before being released, as nothing was found. Anyway, two of the officers then tried to get all friendly with us and change their attitude, so I began quizzing them on certain points that I had picked up from your videos, and they could not or would not answer any of the main questions that I put to them. Example, their roles as trustees, and one or two other points. And after around 30 minutes, they just got back into their vehicle and let us be. Once again, very strange indeed. I only wish I had my video camera on me to share, but my phone battery had just died. Anyway, I know they were only small victories, but even so, it still felt damn sweet. So once again, thanks for your work in exposing this and in sharing it amongst us. It is greatly appreciated, as I have a good idea of the shit you must have went through to finally get to the stage of knowledge where you are today, as I've been at the receiving end of some pretty rough justice myself over the years, and if you're ever in England, then the first beer and maybe even a few more are on me. Blessings, King, truly a man amongst men, Mick. So that is a letter that was written just for you. So on that, what do you think of that? What are your thoughts?
I like that. Definitely understands the concepts by saying if there's going to be a contract today between us, it's going to be under my terms. They didn't like that, so they left.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I like that. That's kind of laughable. The only thing you could follow up with there would be to do things like I've had people here say, where the police tell people to get out of your car. Well, okay. They don't actually say the conditional acceptance routine where I accept your offer and the condition this or that. They just say, well, we don't have a contract. If you want me to get out of my car, it's going to cost you $50,000. Right?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
They try to make it sound like they don't know what you're talking about, but they know damn well what you're talking about, and they that's the usual routine is, I don't know what you're talking about, or you don't know what you're talking about. Thanks for telling me what I don't know. And they try to make you sound crazy, or like you might be like, oh, this guy, he questions authority, or he thinks he's a sovereign, he doesn't have to obey our laws and all this kind of stuff. But no, the things that people have had happen to them when they say things like that to the police should, if the laws were truly enforceable the way they claim, their first response should have been to have beaten you on the spot and handcuffed you, because that's what they normally do. So something's up right away when they start getting wary, and the two of them go back to their patrol car and have a little talk, and then want to come back and talk to you again, so they can get their they can kind of get a plan of action together as to how they're going to try to trap you or contract with you. So that pretty much proves everything right there. You don't ever need any more proof that this is exactly what's going on. You just have to learn how to operate yourself more with more sure of yourself when you're out there talking with police and just out and about, especially when you want to start traveling without a license and without a license plate or your own license plate. I don't know what else to say about that.
How about you give us and all the listeners a feel for how you got involved in this and what started your path? What started you down on this path?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, speaking of taking my lumps, I started now, I think, 15 years ago when I had just gotten out of university and started my own construction company. I think I was 20 at the time. Not even 20, 19. I think I was 19 when I started my own construction company. And the very first year I filed with Revenue Canada for income taxes, I think I'd made a gross profit of about $9,000, and they sent me a $29,000 tax bill in the mail. And so that started a 4-year battle with them, and I knew nothing back then, absolutely nothing. I still thought, the Canadian government was a real government and the whole 9 yards, and I tried fighting Revenue Canada, and they leaned my house, and they seized my bank accounts, and being a fairly inquisitive guy all my life, I remember thinking, well, this isn't right. How do they have the amount of power that they have, and they can just walk in and do all this stuff without any real claim against me, because they refused to prove anything. They tried telling me the burden of proof was on me to prove that I didn't make the money that they claimed I did. And I remember thinking how wrong that was back then. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. How should I have to how is it even possible for me to prove that I didn't do something? So I started looking into it. I think the first website I ever came across was DTax Canada for Eldon Warman. And a lot of this, the theories in there were all valid for the most part, but nothing really could help you because I had my ass handed to me by Revenue Canada for the first 3-4 years until I started going my own way and asking my own questions, and they went away. I haven't filed now since 1995. I actually just found my last filing. It was in some of my files I kept just for shits and giggles for posterity. But my last year was 1995, I think, that I ever filed, and it started coming together even way back in the day, even though I didn't know what I was doing correctly, when I would have visits at my home from one of these agents, and they would come and sit in my living room, and instead of the alleged $29,000 they claimed I owed them, after a couple of years, I'd said to them way back in the day, well, you know what, I don't owe that money, I'm not going to argue with you people, so I'm just never going to file ever again until we get to the bottom of what happened, of why you think I owe you this money. And I learned how to exist with no bank accounts and completely off the system, out of the grid. That was my solution back then. Well, I'm just going to exist completely off the grid so they can't find me, and then I don't have to worry about anything anymore. So I learned to exist with no credit, with no bank accounts, with no nothing. And it was actually quite simple and very, very relieving to do it that way. It wasn't a problem, and they'd come by my house and be like, well, and then all of a sudden the focus started to shift after about 3 years, and they started saying, well, you know, let's just forget about that money you owe us for right now, and let's concentrate on getting you to file for the last couple of years. And I said, no. I said, I told you, I'm not going to file. I said, until you guys send me confirmation I don't owe you anything, I'm not filing at all. And so they kept up with that, and eventually I started asking them, I said, well, hey, you know what, as a contractor, I'd be a little concerned if somebody owed me $29,000. I wouldn't be worried about asking about new work to do with them. I'd be more worried about collecting on what I'm owed already. How come you guys only want me to file? You're not concerned about the previous year's alleged debt. And they would never answer that. And so that's what started me down the proper path to try and figure out what's going on, which led to, obviously, you know, within the last 5 years or so, this is all contract. You don't owe any money until you contract. And because I wasn't renewing the yearly contract, they were more concerned about that. Over the next couple of years, the amount started going down. They started sending me offers in the mail. Well, how does $17,000 sound? How does $9,000 sound? I think the last time I ever got a letter from them, I think they were down to $3,000 was their offer, and I just wasn't replying at all. I got in the habit of actually pulling out a red marker, and every time I got a new notice from them, I just write, go fuck yourself on it in red marker, and I sent it right back to them.
This is one of the reasons why most of us love you so much, because of the fact that you just don't give a fuck. It's just one big fuck you at the corporation, ha ha ha.
It really was, actually, and that was the funniest thing, because that seemed to have the most impact, because they couldn't contract with me, right? And they didn't know what to do, because they never even sent me court documents, because I would have written the same thing on them. I've done that with traffic tickets. I went out with my brother one time just to go get a bunch of photo radar tickets when they first appeared in Winnipeg, just to see what would happen. So we got about 17 of these bastards after a couple of weeks in the mail. And I didn't care about any implications on my license or on my registration or anything, and we just wrote a different thing on each one of these notices that we got in the mail. And I wrote, go fuck yourself on a couple of them. I wrote, no contract on a few. I wrote, I don't accept your contract offer on other ones, all in big red marker right across the ticket diagonally, and sent it all back to the courthouse. Well, I never heard about them ever again. Still, to this day. I think I heard from a collection agent like a couple of years later who tried collecting on these things, but they all just went away, right? And so
well,
that
and
was
the thing with the collection, not to interrupt, but the thing with collection agencies is once they're given to a collection agency, that means that the person holding the debt sold it to the collection agency, and you're not even in contract with them.
Of course not. They discounted it, right? The court's already made, now I know the court's already made the money off the securities that were generated in default conviction for the most part, and they made their money and then discounted the debt that doesn't even exist anymore to a collection agency, which is fraud, because they've already written it off and they've collected on the security. But anyways, so I used to do stuff like that back in the day, and I just didn't give a shit, exactly. And that's because I figured, okay, well, I just learned how to live off the grid anyways, like completely out of their box, so they can't find me. So I'm just not going to worry about this anymore. And I thought I was going to be able to live like that for the rest of my life until the first incident happened, where I got pulled over in Brandon, Manitoba, in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve on my way home for Christmas. And I got harassed by some police who had I had a license and I had insurance at the time. They had no reason for what they did other than they probably had an alert on my file to mess with this guy. And I got dragged out of my truck and I got beaten by about 6 Brandon police officers and thrown in jail for 16 hours for nothing, for absolutely nothing. And then they charged me with obstruction of a peace officer and about 5 other charges. So I just did my usual tactic with that, and I just ignored it for about 5 years, and there was 3 failures to appear for court and 2 failures to appear for fingerprinting by the time they finally arrested me one time, and they got me on a recognizance where if I didn't show up for court, this was now D-Day. Like, I had to actually start learning what was going on and figuring this out and go to court and fight this stuff, or I was looking at 2.5 years in jail for nothing.
Oh, jeez.
So at that point I figured, okay, I can't just live out of the box anymore. I got to figure out what's going on, and that was about 6 years ago. And I ended up going through, well, the court ended up happening late last spring, about 1.5 years ago, and I knew enough to go in, and after three days in court, not really using arguments, but it turned out to be the best experience of my life, because I got to actually see the operation of the court and what was having an effect and what wasn't, and what was really happening. So it's impossible to really figure things out unless you actually throw yourself right in there, and it's a whole trial by fire. But I ended up walking out 3 days later with, I think they went through three crown attorneys on me. They had 2 removed from the case. They wound up with their third one, a senior litigator who actually ended up being respectful to me, at least, finally. And they discharged everything against me after the 3rd day. They convicted me of all the charges, which I thanked them for. I said, thank you. They found me guilty, and I just stood up and I said, well, thank you. I've been trying to plead guilty to the facts for 3 days now. And they said, well, but we're gonna discharge everything right away. I said, I don't care. I said, can I go now? Are we done yet? And so these 9 charges just kind of went away, and they convicted me, and they discharged everything on the spot, which is to me a victory, because they had originally asked for, I was looking at 2 years in prison, and by the end of the 3rd day, I didn't even know what I'd technically done right until a few more experiences with the courts and the police, and we went over everything, and we were able to cross-reference everything that we did to see, well, okay, well, this is why they did this is why this happened, figured everything out, and when it came to sentencing, the judge looked at the Crown like, okay, well, I've convicted him. What do you want? And the Crown basically put his palms up in the air and said, I'm walking away from this. I'm leaving that up to you. I don't want nothing to do with this. So the Crown was trying to walk away from the liability of the claims that they had brought against me, because if they had asked for something, I'd have recourse against them. So they put their palms up. They left the judge hanging. He ended up asking, I think, for $50 in fines for 9 criminal charges that were supposed to see me in jail for 2 years, which I didn't pay anyways because I don't give a shit. And from there, we've built the whole system you see, the philosophy, the ideas we're working on is all based off my experiences in court. That was only 1. I'm up to about 7 now, where now I'm initiating the things, and I want to go to court against these people. I love it. I think it's great, and we're having fun with it. But we were able to break down everything that's going on from these experiences, and when I finally abandoned a lot of the stuff that we'd learned previously online, we'd watch these videos and the truth language and UCC and all this stuff, and all this, the only thing that stuff left me with is confusion. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. You'd have to be a rocket genius just to figure this stuff out, never mind go into a courtroom and attempt to argue this. If this is common law, this is something the common man cannot understand. So it has to be wrong. Or if it's not, correction, it's not wrong, but if the common man cannot make these arguments or defend himself using them, then what good are they? So we had to go back and we had to basically just rebuild our entire way of thinking about this. And I think I told you about the experience I had in court that really made it come all together for me last year when we spoke on Thursday or Friday last week.
Thursday, I think it was, yeah. Thursday
night, yeah, where I'd said that I had the opportunity to go to court, and I call them all opportunities now, to defend one of my numbered corporations against bylaw violations for the city of Winnipeg. And that was when I figured it all out, because I had to sit down.
It's a good story.
Yeah, and I had to sit down, I had to think about how do I defend a corporation in court, because back then I was still thinking, well, this corporation that I went down and registered, it's registered, like it has to abide by statutes. Obviously, it's a creation of statutes, right? So how on earth am I going to defend against this? And I mulled over it for a couple of days, and I got to thinking, well, hang on a second here, wait. I'm like, okay, this thing is registered, but the government didn't create it. It's not a creation of statutes. My signature created it. And where in my articles of incorporation does it say I'm obligated to obey, or the new entity I created is obligated to obey statutory law? I said, well, it doesn't. I said, and besides that, who's authorizing statutes to be enforced against my corporation? I said, well, nobody. I said, I'm the only one that can authorize anything to be brought against my corporation, or to be legislated, or to be administrated against my corporation, because I'm the administration. And the thoughts started coming together, and all of a sudden, just all this learning over the last 10 years. I remember there's one morning I woke up and it was like a bang. I was like, holy shit, that's what's going on. So I had an idea of what was going on, even though I hadn't fully explored all the possibilities of this yet. And okay, I'm going to go into court this morning. I know exactly what I'm going to say to this prosecutor. So I walked in, and there's a lineup of people waiting to speak to this city prosecutor, and he's yelling and screaming at people, and he probably knows who he is if he's ever gets the occasion to listen to this. And I remember as soon as I heard him yelling at people and everything, you're all, the charter says this, and you're obligated to do this, and yada, yada, yada. And I gave my car keys to my buddy. I said, here, take these. I said, I'm going to be in jail after I talk to this guy. And he kind of laughed, and he was like, oh, this is going to be good. So I got up there, and I was wearing my leather jacket, a nice knee-length one, and my business pants, and I was looking a little businessy. And I walked up there, and he looks at me, and he goes kind of like, what do you want? Like, what are you here for? And I said, well, I'm here regarding the matter for, blah, 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 Manitoba Limited. He goes, all right, what's your name? And so if people have watched the videos, they'll understand now the difference between the importance in your name and your roles. So this is the first time, instead of saying, well, I'm Dean Clifford, when he said, what's your name? I said, my name is President and Chief Executive Officer of that corporation. That's who I am. And I got about 8 inches away from his nose when I said that, and I had to lean down a little bit because I might look short in the videos, but I think I'm just over 5'11". I'm about 190 pounds. I'm not a small guy, and he was. And I just got right up to him, put my nose about 8 inches from his face, and I said, I'm the president and CEO of that corporation. That's who I am. And he just stood back, took a couple steps back, and went, all right, and boy, you've never seen an attitude adjustment on an individual like this in your life. And so that's what made me realize, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter what my name is. What role am I here in? What capacity am I? And that's when, as soon as I got back home, and I sent a letter off to him clarifying everything, and he stayed proceedings and wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole after that. I broke everything down from that point and reversed everything and went all the way back to, okay, where is the beginning of this so we can rebuild the whole model that I work with now, and I broke it all the way down to man. I said, okay, we all know we're a man, so where does everything else come from? And then we built backwards from there and figured out, okay, this is where the name comes from, the legal person, so what's our role in that name? We figured out what the fact that, a legal person that's not you, obviously, it's something you created. How was it created? Well, it was created by an agreement between you and government, so obviously that's a two-party contract now, and what are the roles of this person, and trust law, and it all just blossomed from there. And it's right when it's so simple that everyone can understand it, because that's exactly what it is. And I started going out and teaching this to some of the people that we had already involved in groups with here in Winnipeg, and as soon as I started talking about this, they all just went, holy shit. And everything clicked for them. They started understanding it, and since then people have been contacting me and saying, yeah, as soon as we understood a little bit of what was going on, we brought up these 2 points in court, and no one wants to speak to us anymore.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. And that's the thing for everybody that I've seen that's listened to your stuff or watched your videos. They're sitting back and going, why hasn't somebody explained it this way before? This we understand. This we can work with. There's no riddles. There's no hoops to jump through. We get this. And why isn't it being shared? Now that we've got that why part over, we have you sharing, and we're grateful, and we thank you. Now we can be a little bit more independent in doing it ourselves. Unfortunately, it takes for that one person sometimes to get the information out there in a way that is, communicable. Is that right? Oh, whatever. But if you do it in a way that you can relay the message to the masses, which is something that hasn't been done yet from what I've seen, because I have not seen the response like I've seen to your videos. Yep.
Well, and this is the other part too. Is everybody used to contact me and I know a lot of the other people too that are teaching certain concepts, and I'm not going to say whether or not certain concepts are valid or not valid, but everybody always wants to know, well, where did you get that information from? You know, who wrote the book on that? Or can you prove anything you're saying? And I always like to tell people, it's like, well, the first concept you have to understand is that there is no definitive authority on your rights other than God. Like, you're the sovereign. You're the one that dictates your rights. You dictate how your life is going to go. Like, everyone wants this book somewhere that's got a signature on it by somebody that said, yep, he's right. And that doesn't exist. The whole point of being a sovereign is the fact that, you know, aside from being subject to the laws of God, you're subject to no man.
Yeah. I have a suggestion from one of the listeners. I don't know if you've ever seen the RSA videos where it's a hand drawing as someone's talking. They've suggested that you do like a cartoon type way of explaining that. So if there's anybody out there that's listening to this and has any knowledge in this kind of thing and would like to help Dean out, get a hold of me and I'll send you to him.
There you go. Yeah, send me a graphic artist because I got more than enough on my table than to start learning how to make cartoons to post online. So
well, and these things have funny ways of working themselves out. So if you put it out there, I'm sure by the end of the week you will have somebody saying, "Hey, I can do that for you."
And that's how this stuff all snowballs, you know. And I'm not. The other problem is a lot of this stuff when you go to seminars and you're paying for all this information from people, it's concepts that people have come up with that they kind of try to hold close to themselves as their intellectual property, and they want to profit from it in the whole 9 yards. And my theory on this is, and we had to talk about this, about where about the incident, the two incidents in my life that led me to on the path that I'm on right now. And the only conclusion I can draw from everything is this is not my information. It's not my intellectual property, because this information is coming to me from somewhere else. And it's not mine to keep. I'm supposed to share this with people. Everyone should know their rights.
More people need to understand that they're not supposed to gain from the help. I mean, what ends up happening is gifting happens or bartering happens in some way, shape, or form. If you're giving, you're going to get back. But people are really, really consumed with the idea of instant gratification. So that makes it a little more difficult, which is why I admire you so much, because you're not into that instant gratification. Obviously, if you've been fighting for as long as you are, it's not about the instant gratification of it.
No, quite the opposite, actually. I mean, no matter what people believe, on some level, you're judged by the universe, by God, whatever you want to call it, by something greater than yourself. You're being judged by your actions. So if you're not out there doing good, what you consider to be good, and you want, I'm not even sure if I'm phrasing that properly, but I think I'm
with the best of intentions, though.
There you go. It's your intentions. Do you want better things for mankind, or do you want worse things for mankind, kind of thing? And I've spent time in jail now with people that obviously should not be there. 90% of the people that are in our prisons should not be there. It's their third open liquor charge on a reserve for just walking down a gravel road drinking a beer. They've never harmed anybody, and they've been in there for 16 months waiting for their first hearing. Like, this stuff is wrong. This stuff has to end, and we're not holding government accountable. Nobody is. And we're the only ones who can hold government accountable. If everybody thinks that it's up to the police and attorneys to sue government to hold them accountable, I mean, wake up.
Okay, now here's that. You're fantastic. Your interviews with you are just wonderful. My talk on Thursday with Dean was fantastic. Everything led into the next question kind of type thing, much like it is now. So he's talking about government accountability. I would like you to explain how you've been able to make the government accountable and how far you've come in that.
Yeah, we're still meeting, obviously, a lot of resistance because you got to remember, once the gig is up, the gig is up. So these people do anything and everything they can to cover up their crimes. When you bust them on a lie, they make a bigger lie to cover up the first lie. That's just the way government works. That's all they do is they lie. The whole point of government in the first place was to create a civilized organization to protect your birthright, which is your share of the Commonwealth. So if somebody had a claim against your share of the Commonwealth, they could bring it to court if you damaged them, and they could collect on it or whatever, and everything was handled in a civilized manner. And 6 men with guns couldn't just show up at your house and take it from you, right? It all had to be done legitimately through the courts. The Queen ultimately was the protector of the common law, the defender of the common law and the faith, the whole 9 yards. But what government has done is they've found a way to actually be the ones to meddle in your trust, in your estate, and steal from it, which is what they're doing. And the way to hold them accountable is to take them to court in a civilized manner. Protesting is not the way to go and to hold government accountable. They want you to do that because that's where they just label you all as a bunch of, what's the proper word for that? Hooligans, I guess. I don't know. People who don't obey the rule of law just go out and they just riot, right? They don't try to handle things in a civilized manner. So you're going to get pepper sprayed and beaten, and as far as I'm concerned, you should be. Because there's better ways of doing this where you can hold the government accountable, and that's by taking them to court properly and suing them. And that's a lot of things we're teaching people now, and they have to basically commit acts of such outright fraud and blatant lying to cover up what they're doing that they're exposing themselves for us. And that just happened this morning. I think when you first contacted me here before we got on the radio, you were privy to a bit of a conversation there of a friend of mine who was just in court this morning. It was supposed to be for default judgment against the province of Manitoba, and the judge did everything he could to conspire with the attorneys for the City of Winnipeg Police, and the province to basically meddle in his estate and deny him due process of law, deny him remedy, and they just exposed everything they're doing. They exposed everything, and so now we're going to have to take the courts down. And once people understand what's going on, you do have remedy. There's always remedy. There's always a higher authority to go to, but you have to express your injuries. You can't write a letter to your member of parliament and complain that you were mistreated, okay? You got to swear out an affidavit of what the police did to you, and you have to serve it on them and let them not reply to it. And then you have to sue them civilly. In Manitoba, it's Queen's Bench. In Ontario, it seems to be Superior Court. Wherever your superior court is, in the province you live, in the United States where you live, anywhere in the world where you live, especially Commonwealth nations that are technically allegedly under what they call the Crown, you have recourse and remedy. And people bitch to me all the time. Well, you know what? Oh, like they're abusing my rights and I can't do anything about it. But all you have to do is go and read the rules of Court of Queen's Bench. Read the rules. Go read a book. Read the Criminal Code of Canada. Go buy a copy. It's $20. And instead of watching TV that night for 8 hours, read a book. I canceled my cable 14 years ago. I have not watched a TV show except at a friend's house to be reminded of how stupid it is. I have not watched a television program. It's unbelievable how mind-numbing it is. Read a book. Go read the criminal code to understand how their courts work. The court process is right there. If you can't read and you haven't tried taking somebody to court and you want to just hire a lawyer thinking he's going to defend your rights, then you're going to be a slave your entire life.
Yeah. Now some people are like Philly Boy in the chat here saying people are lazy, and it's very, very true. We need to be motivated. And, well, not necessarily me personally, but, we do. We need some kind of motivation. And a lot of human beings, as I've said, have to be backed into a corner before they come out swinging. That's why we have to kind of set that stuff aside and go, okay, that's fine, and yes, we do, but now we have information that we can spread. So we individually have to start living this in order to have it spread. It's the 100 monkey syndrome. That's the way that it works. Now, have you won a case yet?
Well, there's different definitions of win. There's other processes that I'm personally speaking, and even up until recently, I was never a big believer in Queen's Bench, for the simple fact that yes, your remedy is there, but you're also relying on the fact that you're assuming a public servant called a judge is going to do the right thing, and that almost never happens. They're going to defend the government tooth and nail. Period. Even when the government hasn't defended themselves, the judge is going to try to step in and defend the government for them, which is a complete violation of due process of law. I don't know how many people have watched a lot of the Winston Shrout stuff that's out there to do with commercial liens and remedy. I learned all that stuff years ago, and now I've applied a lot of it. And the problem is, you're not taught really what you can do with these commercial liens, what they really are, where to enforce them, the fact that they're only a step in a bigger process. One of the beautiful things that I think Shrout even says himself personally is that we create our own remedy. Create your remedy. I mean, we're the sovereigns here, right? We're the ones that have to create our own remedy, and so the private banking system, the private international banking system, is one great tool that's out there that can be used, because you got to remember, governments have to bank somewhere, and banks don't care who you are. They want your deposit. They want your business. They will take a claim against the government, and they will monetize it. They don't care. They just want your deposit. This is where you start to use the system's greed against themselves. And so that's one of the things I'm pursuing right now, that I'm debating whether or not I'm even going to make an informational video on that down the road, because at some point you're going to start to piss off the wrong people.
Oh yeah, well, and we discussed that. You have to keep yourself safe to some extent as well, because you give them a bit of get them on their road, and then they kind of have, you can't lead them through the whole thing, because then you're putting yourself at risk.
That's why I've decided I'm going to be teaching people basic concepts, and it's up to them from there to go out and to do the legwork, to learn, to research, to create their own remedy, to dismantle the banking system, read the acts, read United Nations conventions on international bills of exchange, read all this stuff. Read it. Don't email me and ask me to solve your problems for you. If the concepts are here for you, and once you understand your role in things, that you are the principal creditor of everything that's going on in the world. Nothing could exist without your signature and without your equity. Nothing. That puts you in
there's Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's pretty much what that was.
There's an opt-out on everything you sign.
Of course
there is. You don't have to agree to any of their terms.
No, they'll try to force you. I mean, I can't remember if I even covered in some of the videos about when the police come to arrest you claiming to have a warrant and stuff like that, right? But the only way they can have a warrant is to have an original charge. How many people have ever asked to see the original charge?
Yeah. Well, that's something I understand. No, that's something I understand more so. Just a quick example. My husband was at work. John was at work. And just quickly to let everybody know, because I'll forget if I don't do it right now, you're listening to freetalkradio.com. This is Lifting the Veil. I'm your host, Carrie Lee, and I'm here today live with Sovereign Dean Clifford, or Dean of the Clifford family. Do you care about that kind of stuff?
I don't care about that. The name is irrelevant. Once you establish your identity, and your identity is your role, it's your title, and remove presumptions that you're something else, you can use any name you want. I just, Dean Clifford, that's my name. The problem is when you're talking with police and you say your name verbally, they presume automatically that your last name is capitalized and your first name is not, because they can only deal with other public servants. Police are like an internal security force for the government.
Right.
And if you're even speaking to them, you must be something they have jurisdiction over, so you got to remove that. But the name is irrelevant. The title. It's the title.
It's your position. It's what you decide to do with it, kind of type thing. Now, John was at work, and I guess there was this cycler coming by, and the cops turned in and threw him up against the hood of the car and threw the cuffs on him. Well, John, this was like the next day after our chat. You and John and I had our conversation. And John's standing at the end of the driveway at work on break, and he's yelling, "You are not your name. You are the president and CEO of said numbered corporation. Don't give them anything." And everybody around work's looking at him going, "What the fuck are you talking about, you fucking weirdo?" And he just kept on rifling off stuff. And finally, the cop looked over and grabbed the guy by his head and chucked him in the car and looked at John and just shook his head, And he was like, "Well, what? What did I do?"
You know what?
Anyway.
It's one of the things I'd like to talk about, maybe even in upcoming stuff there, that if we're going to be posting more stuff online, we probably will be. Or a lot of people have to understand, I guess, too, is that Free Manitoba is not my site. It's the website of one of the guys or a group of guys that show up at the little tutorials that I'm giving. They asked to post it on there. Originally, these videos were only supposed to be for internal use, for a couple of our members to take home just to re-watch, so they could get some of the stuff through their head after watching it a couple more times. And then they said, "Well, hey, how about we just throw this up on the internet?" And I was like, "Hey, why not? Okay." And so that's why the poor quality of the videos. It's not like this was ever supposed to be something published on YouTube, and then now here we are 3 weeks later. There's 30 we're going to be pushing 31 or 30. No, we're going to be beyond 32,000 views by the end of the day today. And these are just terrible quality videos of one of our own presentations for 10 of our members of our own group here in Manitoba. So, but I will be getting, if I don't get my own website up very soon, I think all I'm going to do is record just some of my own stuff as well, where I'm just kind of speaking before the camera myself here at the office and posting it on my own YouTube channel just to cover a lot of this stuff. But a lot of the things people have to realize is there's no reason, if you even look in the Criminal Code of Canada at the definition of a peace officer is every single one of us. We are all peace officers because we're enforcing the peace at all times. We're supposed to be maintaining the peace. In fact, for a police officer or an RCMP or a sheriff to become your equal, they have to remove their badge and step out from behind their office. Otherwise, they are subservient to you. And you can order them around. You can come to the defense of a fellow human being and walk up to police and just say, "Hey, by what authority are you attacking this man? What is your claim?"
Which is something we have to really stop being fearful of doing.
We have to stop being scared of them. That's when I knew I had things right, because I actually stopped being scared. And that goes right back to biblical references in the Bible and stuff like that about when you know who you are, you understand the name, and you know what your role is here, the fear just melts away, and it really does. It's actually, it's even more crazy than your head might explode by the time you realize everything that's going on. It's like, holy shit, like this stuff just gets more and more real as you go. And it's unbelievable the self-awareness you start to have when you get to these higher levels.
We're going to get back to the biblical references in a bit, but I'd like to understand your knowledge of international laws a little bit more. What do you have to say on that subject?
Well, international laws, if you basically what is a nation, right? That's what international is. It's just a group of nations that have come together. So what's a nation? And a nation is not a physical landmass. A nation is an administrative organization, and that's what Canada is. Canada doesn't physically exist, not on this landmass. It's like where you see a map and you see the landmass of Canada, and it's got Canada written over top of it. That's no different than looking at a sales territory map for Coca-Cola. For this landmass, it's a sales territory.
Well, the only Canadians are the government agents.
Yes. Agents of the government of Canada. So what they've tried to do, technically speaking, they do have jurisdiction in matters to enforce common law and whatnot. Like, we do have to have an organizational structure in place, but they're doing so de facto. So I never want to dismiss the entire, you're not required to answer to anybody. I mean, yeah, you better believe you're going to be answering for it if you harm somebody. So that's where that delusion is going to melt away, is you don't think you have to answer for anything as soon as you harm somebody. But then, yeah, international. I mean, I think there's a Supreme Court case here in Canada. I don't have it with me, and I know somebody that does have it, where I think five natives in northern Alberta or something like that just got together and decided they're going to start their own nation. So they gave the government notice of that, as far as I'm aware, and the government took them to court, and they lost. And the court said, no, they can start their own new nation. Anyone can. Because once you realize who you are, your legal person is your own nation. Your registration with the government is simply their acknowledgement that you exist. It doesn't put you under their authority at all. It's like basically you're now two nations who now have a trade relationship with one another. That's all it is.
Now here's another question though. Do you know about treaties and what treaties are? Things that started before.
The treaty is basically like the trust corpus of an agreement between you and any other organization. We have a treaty together. We have a contract. We have a business relationship. This is how we're going to operate ourselves.
Okay. What of the idea that whatever we're doing now? This is just me playing just playing. What of the fact that, say, the Indians were here first and we have no right to start a nation on land that's already theirs that the corporations decided to take hostage? Do you see my train of thought there, or do I have to...
I do, and that'll go back to the whole land claim stuff and the fact that, yeah, the government never did live up to all the stuff that they said they were going to do, and all their money's being held in some escrow trust account, for all the resources and the whole 9 yards. They're being screwed over. Here's the problem with that. Technically speaking, we are all... Anyone who's born on this land is now a native of the landmass that is commonly referred to as Canada. We all have a claim to wherever we're born. right? We like
Right.
what are they going to do? Tell me to go back home because my family's been here for 6 generations? Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's wishful thinking, but so we all have a claim to everything that's going on. The problem is, if the government of Canada, the corporation, which is what the British North America Act created, if the Crown Corporation of Canada made a deal with these people, then these people have to go after Canada to enforce that. That's not our problem. It's not our responsibility. That's their problem and their responsibility, and they're starting to do that now. I think down in Ontario and the Squamish out in BC, they're taking back what's theirs, what was promised to them in their treaties. There's so much to go through to figure out everything that's gone on. I just don't bother. Mm-hmm. I don't care anymore. All I can do is I can say that I'm here, I exist, and I have the right to life and to my share of the Commonwealth of whatever's going on around me.
Excellent. Now, I have a friend who is Indian, Kami Kokanu. Am I saying that right? Kami Kokanu, I think so. Anyway, he's asking, would you agree that treaties 1 through 10 are treaties?
I don't even know what those are.
Know? Yeah, no, me neither.
No, I know.
But it was
I know. I read the Royal Proclamation back in the day that was to do with all the Indians and the gifting of all the land that was west of Ontario, and I think it was 1863 or something like that. The Royal Proclamation of 1863. I read that one once upon a time back in the day, and just from reading that, you can tell damn well nothing was ever lived up to. Nothing.
Right. Obviously, definitely. He's basically saying it's a trap. Okay, so I also have another question from somebody in the chat who wanted to understand things as simple as, say, marijuana possession and stuff like that, and how this can work for or against you within the sovereign issue. How to get around that? Do you have any advice to that?
A criminal charge for possession?
Yeah, or being caught with it right.
Okay.
Yeah, or being caught with it right there and then.
Okay, once you understand what's going on and you realize that criminal code violations, number one, the criminal code of Canada, now if we're talking about Canada, I can't get into American stuff, even though it's basically the same thing. The criminal code of Canada is a measuring stick of how much offenses basically cost you if you commit one. But nothing in the criminal code of Canada is enforceable unless it's under an act. That's why you're charged under the Highway Traffic Act, or you're charged under this act, or you're charged under that act, and I think I covered that in one of the videos. So if it's not in an actual act, it has no force and effect, number one. You can't just be charged with something in the Criminal Code of Canada, period. Number two, all you have to do is read through the Charter and Rights and Freedoms, and you'll understand real quick that, number one, the Charter and Rights and Freedoms is the supreme law of what's called Canada, this organization that's coming against you. It's the supreme law. It also goes on to state that it only applies to agents of the government. Therefore, how could anything under that act, anything subordinate to that act, any subservient act, period, ever apply to something that's not an agent of the government? Marijuana possession, the charge they're coming after you with is a charge from their code book. It's like if you work for Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola says, while you're on duty at Coca-Cola, you are not to be drinking at your desk. Okay, not a problem. Well, I guess you only have to worry about that while you're working for Coca-Cola and while you're at your desk. Once you understand that, you'll understand, okay, well, what relevancy does the Pocket Criminal Code charge against marijuana have on me? People have to start understanding who these statutes apply to. I'm not going to call them laws. They're not laws. Now, the only way an act can be binding on you is if you've contracted with the government through that act. And even then, I think I talk about in one of my videos there about even though you may have a driver's license, when does that apply to you? Just because I have a license to operate in a capacity, does that mean I'm always operating that capacity? It's like if you got a job at McDonald's. Okay, you're hired. Here you go, sign this, you got a job. And then you never were scheduled for one shift, ever. Well, that's great. I've got a license to do something, but have I ever actually done it?
Yeah.
The driver's license is to carry on commerce as a function of government. Basically means you can be a government agent and conduct their commerce. You're licensed to do that. Does that mean that's what you're doing on the roads all the time? No.
Yeah, because nobody has any clue about anything like that, though.
Of course not. It's all but you're not rebutting any of their presumptions because we have no idea what's going on. We were also educated in their school system. If you look at their school system, everything is the healthcare system, everything that's going on, every single one of them fill the planks of the Communist Manifesto. Nobody ever realizes they're living in a communist nation until it collapses. And then afterwards they go, holy shit, we were communist.
A lot of us are figuring it out now.
Yeah, Russians didn't realize
awful.
that they used to live in a communist nation until after communism fell. And they went, holy shit, we were communist? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where
now,
we're at.
I have a small, where we're going to go back to, say, the religious aspect of it for a second, because if you'll find that anywhere in a court system, you're going to find the Bible alongside absolutely everything.
Yep.
Now, from what I understand, and I'm not a feminist, and I think anybody that knows me knows that I am the farthest thing from a feminist, although I do like to, no, I am equal. And I will state that point until my dying day. I am as equal to you. You are no better than I am because you have a penis swinging between your legs. But if you look to the Bible and you look to the court system and whatnot, the woman is lesser. And there was a sovereign, I have a link for it, I'll just have to grab it, but there was a sovereign who got away from murdering his wife because of this. He used God's law. Hold on a second. He used God's law to harm a woman and fought using his rights to abuse women, as the Bible so aptly says that a man can do to a woman. And that, I mean, it's parts like this that that stuff worries me. And I'd like to know, say, where you stand on that.
Okay.
What your thoughts are about equality and stuff. And I'm not trying to get you into a big, gender thing. I'm really not. But I know that there's other women out there that are going, wait a minute, free man. And it not from a feminist point of view, but from an equal point of view.
Yeah. Actually, give me 2 seconds, and I'm going to answer that. 1 second here.
Perfect. All right. Just to let everybody know, we have a new show starting on freethinkradio.com. Tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, -5 and -5 GMT in Europe, GMT, sorry. We have Through the Looking Glass with my husband John Miller and my good friend Bruce Fenton, and that starts, as I said, today, and I think it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you all there to listen in on that show. It should be fantastic. Again, the lineup is on the lineup. If you look at the screen at the top where the header is, you'll find the schedule, the station schedule there. We have some fantastic shows on the station. Actually, they're all fantastic, and I'm not just saying that because I'm one of them. But no, they are. They're all good shows. Everybody's going to get a little bit of something out of all the shows there. And welcome back, Dean.
Hello. Okay, so I'll address that based on the fact that I know nothing to do with this court case, and I'll tell you that what I would take away from that is the same thing as the O.J. Simpson trial, is the arguments that were probably made by the guy who killed his wife were made in a court scenario where the state was bringing the charges and the claims against the man. The state cannot be an injured party, so as soon as he started bringing the Bible into the courtroom, he took the state's ability to convict him away from them. But that doesn't mean he's free of guilt or he's free from liability. What that means is the family of the woman that was harmed or killed has to bring the claim against him. Just because the state can't bring the charges anymore, which the state should never ever be bringing charges against somebody. They have no standing. They're not an injured party. Oh. Right? And that's the same thing with O.J. He got away with murder for the criminal charges. Did that save him in the civil side? No, he lost everything. He was still guilty over there. Just because the state couldn't prosecute didn't remove him of the liability of his actions. Right? So people are probably going to mistakenly believe that that's because the Bible said he could kill his wife. I really doubt the Bible says he can kill his wife. Well,
no, it's not that. It's about the idea of woman being subordinate under man. Yeah. And that's my concern, because I mean, it's not that I want to get my back up, but I mean, between what we live in right now, feminism is destroying femininity, and the Bible's destroying the equality. This is just from my perspective. I know people share my thoughts. How do you regard the idea of man and woman? Yeah, I'm asking. I know it's a personal thing, but I'm curious.
Yeah, well, obviously equals. I don't even think. I think that any illusion of subordinacy probably comes from references in the Bible where it maintains the idea that basically it's up to the husband to defend the wife. That's why they have lesser standing when it comes to court matters and accusations and all that kind of stuff, right? Because
not just that. The fact that everything that we endure is punishment, from our menstruation cycle to our childbearing. That's some type of punishment. It's right from Genesis we're shown as being lesser and almost on the evil side of things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I got a friend who knows a lot more about that, and he's explained to me the stance in the Bible to do with the original sin and the whole 9 yards, and I just really, I couldn't comment on that even if I wanted to. And
that's cool. I just wanted to throw it out there because I knew it was a question that some people wanted answered, and I was curious. So thank you for at least making the attempt.
Yeah, no, I do know something about that. Not enough that I could actually speak about it though, and that's to do with the garden, the garden, and the original sin and the whole 9 yards, and what happened there. I know somebody that could sit down and explain that to you ad nauseum for 8 hours, but I wouldn't want to bore anybody with that.
Right. No, that's good. See, and I admire the fact that you can sit there and say, I'm not even going to begin to touch on that because I know a little bit, but not enough. See, when Dean knows what he's talking about, he doesn't stop talking. And that shows strength of character right there and I don't mean to tote you, but I mean, seriously, that's huge strength of character, and I appreciate that in an individual. Let's see, where do we want to go from here? Where do you want to go from here? What would you like to conquer next?
I'm not too sure. I would say that, to do with the man and woman stuff, though, I'll just make one more brief topic on that. Is I do think it is the place of the man, though, because I hate to say it, we do have gender roles. Men are just usually more physically strong and more physically strong of character than a lot of women out there. And I do think it is one of our roles, and that's why when you're and I don't say marriage because marriage is a corporate term, but when you're joined in matrimony. And you become your wife, and your wife becomes you. You are one and the same. You're inseparable. I do think it is our place that when if something was ever brought against our wife, that we are the ones to stand up and say, "Hey, no, you talk to me.
Yeah,
you have a problem. You talk to me. It is my place to deal with these kind of matters." And I'm really okay. I don't think that's sexist or demeaning to women. I just think that it's because we have more capacity to deal with these kind of issues.
Maybe.
I mean, in a physical way. Back in the day.
In a physical way, yeah, probably, yeah, definitely. I'm an outspoken woman, so I usually take care of my own, and then John goes, why don't they ever attack you when I'm around? Because they know you'd kill him. Yes, exactly. You'd kill them. That's why.
Equality of mind aside, how many women hold the belt in the UFC? We're just physically stronger. I mean, that's not even sexist. That's just, obviously we're bigger and we're powerful and we're more intimidating. Usually. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I don't have any desire to look like somebody like, say, China. I have no desire to change my body to be that. No, thank you. Yeah. Now, I have someone in the chat and on a private message saying that it's about territorial rights taken away from the feminine through the dominion of man, which is pure international law. I don't know if you want to touch that at all.
I don't know. I do know that basically any idea that women are subservient to men is more so Catholicism than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So, moving along.
Yeah, and then you move along on...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we can move along on that. I don't have many comments to make on that kind of stuff.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad that you...
Any man or any woman who learns his rights can walk into court and can hand them their asses.
And that's what you're most concerned with.
Absolutely. It's got nothing to do with who I think to be the lesser sex or anything, because I don't think there is a lesser sex. But if you know your rights, society exists in a civilized manner today. We have these courts to deal with these matters in a civilized manner where you can walk in where you're supposed to be free from intimidation to speak your mind and enforce your rights. So anybody that knows their rights can enforce them, period.
Yeah, definitely, and that's very admirable, and I thank you, and I do apologize if you feel I backed you into a corner. That wasn't the intention, but it was just something that needed to be touched on. Now, as far as let's see, parental rights. Let's talk about that because a lot of people, I know myself, I was one of them. They're scared to death to turn around and do anything because they're afraid that they're going to have their children taken away. So. What do you have to say on that?
Yeah, that's in the writings of Francis Bacon, actually, of marriage and children. That's one of the things you got to be worried about is when you have a wife and you have children, that gives bargaining chips to your enemies, right? So that's when they can't deal with you, that's the next recourse. Okay, well, this guy, we can't deal with this guy, so let's threaten his kids. And I don't think there's a more callous and shallow act on this planet than going after someone's children because you're not man enough to face them. And I'm just going to call that out point blank for what it is. That's exactly what government does. That's what Child Family Services is. If they don't like you, it's going to be politically motivated, and they're going to come and steal your children as punishment. That's all that is. The premise is they're protecting kids. They're not. For every one kid out of 100 that might actually come from an abused home, the other 99 are not. And 100% of the time, they usually go to a worse environment. So, especially once you learn your rights, and all you got to do is read the United Nations Conference on the Rights of the Child. Download and read that. It'll say right in there what your rights are and what your child's rights are. And government has no claim to your children, period. End of story. They don't even claim that. That's why they try to get you into family court. And they try to get you to agree to arbitration with this judge. I don't know if people have followed any of this stuff, but I think one of the judges of family court here in Manitoba a year ago that is somebody who allegedly is deciding who gets to keep the kids and if CFS can keep your kids and whether your kids are going to a foster home. This judge was a member of a sex group, an online sex group, one of the most morally defunct people you could imagine, is sitting on the bench deciding what's going to happen with your children? Like, are you kidding me? So no, I don't take to that at all.
Is it not the most of it is because we've signed them over to the state anyway, though? We've signed them over. Not. They were born. We gave...
No, we have not. What we did when we signed the particulars of live birth is we actually we consolidated their estate. We protected their estate for them. We said these children were born on this landmass. They have a share of the Commonwealth. They have a share of everything that the Canadian government is supposed to be maintaining and protecting for us in the whole 9 yards. You in no way, shape, or form subrogated your rights to your children to the government. That is a presumption made in court that is not rebutted when you hire a lawyer. So people have to remember the entire point of lawyers in the Law Society is to
further confuse the situation.
Confuse the situation, get you arguing when there's no need for argument, to get you to contract with courts and to agree to arbitration when you're not obligated to. They're all members of the Law Society, and the purpose of the Law Society is to pervert the course of justice. That's a friend of mine that coined that phrase. He said that to me one day. He goes, you realize the entire purpose of the Law Society is to pervert the course of justice. And I thought about it for a minute, and I started laughing. I said, that is possibly the most true statement I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Now, do lawyers understand what you're telling us? Do lawyers get this?
Most of them do, because I've been to court to help people where a lawyer has shown up to try to speak for them while they're in jail, where I've shown up and said, no, this guy's not their lawyer. I have power of attorney. This guy's only here because he was asked to come here probably by another lawyer to make sure that this person stays in jail. And they get real nervous all of a sudden. They don't like me in the courthouse. I think people have to understand, I'm not this untouchable sovereign that's out driving around with a shield, a Star Wars friggin' shield around me that they're terrified of coming near. Like, no, I understand how to go after them and harm them and pay for what they've done to me. But I think even right now, I was supposed to be in court this morning with somebody, but there's still an arrest on site order at the provincial courthouse in Manitoba for me because they don't want me in the courthouse so badly that they have the sheriff's an order down there that I don't even know what for to arrest me on site apparently. And I didn't want to go down there this morning to deal with it because I figured, well, shit, if I'm in jail, I can't speak to these guys this afternoon, so I'll just take care of that on Friday.
Now explain the whole, power of attorney to us, because, to the listeners, because you were explaining this to me on Thursday. If you have like a nation type thing, 5 people in a nation, you all sign power of attorney to each other, and then you speak for each other, or as as power of attorney for the person who's in jail. Yeah. Let's cover that a little bit so people can understand what it is you're talking about.
Okay, that's not one of our that's one of our recent advents, and that's nothing to do with a nation really. All this is, really all a nation is a group of people coming together for a common purpose. If you look up the definition of nation, that's what it is. You don't even have to be formally recognized. that's all that you're getting is formal recognition or a trade deal or a treaty with another nation when you do get recognition with them. But anyway, so we came up with the idea a little while ago that, well, it seems to me that the whole purpose of government is to divide and conquer us, and to get us so fighting with ourselves and fighting with everybody, we don't have time to come together to unite and to help each other against this common enemy. So we said, okay, well, every time we're in jail, we're pretty much we're castrated, we're powerless, we can't do anything from jail, we're pretty impotent until we get out, and then that's when they want us to sign contracts to get out, just so we can get out and defend ourselves. So one of the first things we started doing a little while back was every person that's a member of our group that we think has reached a level where they're a responsible person, it's up to our discretion. We all kind of have deals with one another where we've all given each other a power of attorney over one another to deal with situations like this should we be arrested and thrown in jail. And now the government's starting to realize what we've done, because as soon as one of us gets arrested and thrown in jail, the next day there's already liens being filed against the government, and they're being sued by the person that's in jail. And we can do that because we're acting for that individual because we have power of attorney to act for their person. We're just a director for their person the same way they are. So when you understand roles, you understand that you can actually carry out a role in somebody else's legal person. They can appoint you as a director. They can give you power of attorney to act as them. They can give you the authority to do what they would do if they're incapacitated. So that's exactly what we've done now. So we want government to know that they should start to fear the fact that if they simply arrest us and throw us in jail knowing that we can't do anything, that's now changed. That's not the case anymore. Now we have a group that basically steps up and says, no. We have our own United Nations now. You've attacked one of us, you've attacked all of us. And everybody comes together, and we just have a paperwork storm going on. And we have papers filed the next day. So I think that's got them a little more wary now. And I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. Keep them on their toes and running scared is probably the best thing that you could be doing, or that we all could be doing. Now I have another question here that was sent as a message from Peter. He asks, I've got many different answers from different people. I'd like to know about crossing the border into the U.S. or other countries as a free man.
Yeah.
As a sovereign.
We were going to experiment with this recently, but it's a matter of how many times I want to go and start poking people and wind up in jail just so I can prove my point. You don't need ID to cross the border. The border isn't real anyways. It's a physical mark between the two independent nations, but there's plenty of stories of people who cross the border with their name written in a Bible. All right? Make up your own ID. I do believe in giving notice of who you are when you're out and about, like I cover in one of my videos. Like if I was to cross the border with my license plate and my ID, I'd probably have a hassle. I'd probably have a real tough time of it the first time. You know, they might even arrest me, guns drawn kind of stuff, and I'm really not too worried about that. We have to start making these people become accustomed to the fact that we know what our rights are now, and we're going to start enforcing them. And the first time it happens, it's going to be a mess. You're going to be challenged. You're going to get in problems. You have to know who you are. Don't do it unless you're prepared to do it. You may want to send notice to the border that you're coming, to the State Department if you're going to go to the United States. Hey, just so you're aware, I'm going to be coming across the border on this day. This is who I am. I'm going to have my own license plates. I'm a sovereign. I'm going to make them aware of who I am at the border. If you detain me for unreasonable means, an unwarranted action, you don't have a claim against me, or you're just not going to let me across because I'm not an American citizen, that's not their land anyways. I'm giving you notice I'm going to be crossing the border. I'm going to give you 10 days to reply to me and say, no, you cannot cross the border without the following papers. Right? Give them notice and give them time to respond to you. If they don't, take those papers down to the border with you and say, hey, look, I contacted your State Department. They never replied. I guess they don't have a problem with me crossing the border, and that's your superior. So have a nice day. And cross the border. You got to come up with that. That's your own remedy. That's what I mean by people have to create their own remedy. They have to create their own process. They have to give notice and contact these people. And unfortunately, it's, being a sovereign doesn't mean you can just go and start doing whatever you want. It means you're competent to handle your own affairs. That's what a sovereign is. So if you're not handling your own affairs, you're not a sovereign. If you think that being a sovereign means you can just walk around and do whatever the hell you want, well, you're going to learn in a real quick hurry that that's not what a sovereign is.
No, you actually have to take care of business.
you're taking
You
care of
actually have to
business.
work for it. You actually have to work for it. It's not something that just makes you a slovenly sloth walking
Yeah.
around the planet just
There you
doing
go.
nothing and expecting everybody to bow
Yeah,
down to you or
not
whatever the case
responsible
may
for
be.
your actions, exactly. So if you
Yeah.
want to be somebody not responsible for your actions and it's too much effort to do any of this and to read and to learn, then just go back to watching TV and don't bitch about what government does, because I don't want to hear it.
Exactly. Anybody who's going to take any of this and go, well, whatever, you have no right to bitch. You have no right to complain. And the thing is,
Nope.
is with any information that you have, once you get it, and all of us free thinkers that are here, that are listening to the show right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because the moment you learned something wasn't right, you stopped doing it. You stopped eating McDonald's. Well, most of you have. You stopped, you stopped eating McDonald's. You stopped feeding the corporation as much as possible. You're looking for any way you can to walk away from the beast. So now that you have this kind of information, you have to keep working at it. You have to keep working. Nothing worth having is ever easy. And that's just the truth. And anything easy is not worth having.
No, and that's why I think government actually serves a valuable function there. Like, I'm not against them at all, actually. I think that them being out there cracking heads of morons is actually a very good thing. I don't want a planet of morons walking around out there. I only want to deal with people who are responsible and act in a civilized manner. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm thankful for every experience I had with the government, because if it wasn't for them beating me about my head, I wouldn't have learned everything I learned. I wouldn't be the person I am today.
No,
it's a good thing.
definitely not. Yeah, no, it is. It's a very good thing. And you see, with everything that you've gone through, I mean, I'm sure there's been tons of hard times for you. It's not been any kind of walk in the park. I mean, you've had some experiences that have made me cringe listening. I don't know what you want to share, but I'm just saying you've been through hell and back to get where you are now. And, I mean, you haven't stopped. You just got more resolve to keep on going and to take that step farther now and spread the awareness, which is something that is huge, that we have to be sharing it with each other and not charging each other for this information. We're supposed to be loving and helping each other. That's what people do. We stand side by side. Nobody's leading, nobody's following. We're all side by side in this.
Well, if you do believe in something greater than yourself, you do believe in doing right, you are going to be rewarded for your actions. Period. Whether or not you want to call that like a galactic justice or whatever you want to call it, God, don't care. And
no, it's not even important really. I mean, I do have an issue with the gods of man. That's my issue that I will deal with in my own time, and that's the way I think it should be with anybody. But the point is, and I've had some people say, well, I don't like the way that he goes on about, this is God's last will and testament, and yada, 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 yada. Okay, well, fine. That doesn't make the information less valid.
Well,
and that's something that people need to understand. His information is not valid just because he says something about God's last will and testament and us being the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, well, because I mean that's even a separate complete issue. That's why I tell people, like, I usually recommend don't even bring that up in court. There's no reason to bring the Bible into the courtroom. That's not what's going on there.
Exactly.
So don't.
A lot of people they're hung up on it though, right? Which is why I'm bringing it to light now, because they are hung up on it, and it does need to be addressed to some extent.
Yeah, you know what? Download a copy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Download a copy of that. Read it. The next time you go to court, have a copy of that filed into the court record. And then stand up and say, excuse me, do you recognize and respect this document, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? If you don't, I'm leaving, because why would I be somewhere where somebody doesn't recognize the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Does that sound like something God or something Bible-ish? No, I haven't done that yet, but I just thought that up right now. I mean, shit, do it. I got threatened with contempt of court for mentioning the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in court. I stood up and I said, excuse me, do you recognize and respect the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is your own statute? Mr. Clifford, you're this close to being held in contempt of court. How could that possibly be contempt of court?
Because he doesn't want you educating the rest of the buggers that are sitting behind you.
Of course not. If he actually acknowledged that document, they'd be violating my human rights.
Yeah.
But they're not claiming that they're violating my human rights. They're not claiming I don't have human rights. That's a better way of putting it. They're claiming that I performed a function of government and I violated one of their codes while I was performing a function of government. The problem is their claim doesn't stand up the minute you attack it. The second you attack it, it has no standing. And people have to learn how to, once they dismantle that, to take everything right over to civil court and to sue the shit out of the government.
People need to understand, too, that, the idea that there's a Bible in a jail cell. You said to me you can read yourself and then write yourself right out of your sentence just by taking the time, if you're sitting in jail, to read that piece of the law books. Sorry, not the Bible. The law books that they give you, that they provide for you, that you would never need a lawyer to begin with.
Nope, never. All of it is made available. We just had another incident recently where a friend of ours was in jail for 4 days. And she said that when she was in there, aside from copies of the Bible being everywhere, there was a copy of some pocketbook to Canadian law sitting right there on the bookshelf, right in prison. And she picked it up and read it, and read halfway through the book, and the entire book was replete with references to common law and to the legal person and the differentiation between you and the legal person, and she just went, holy shit, it's all right here. They're making it available, but what do most people do when they go to jail? Okay, well, I've been there. I can tell you what they do. They spend more time talking on the phone, blabbing about who they're going to kill when they get out of there, than they do actually reading a book.
Exactly.
Right? So don't bitch and complain if you don't know your rights, because they've made every effort to make it available to you. Just because they didn't sit you down in a classroom and bore it into your brain, they've made it available for you. So your rights are your own.
Here's something, though. George Hugh, Farmer George, I don't know if you've heard about his plight, have you?
Nope.
Okay, well, he was denied access to any books in his cell.
Okay.
So what of that? What would he do then? Now, this is the one that's taking Monsanto to court.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because they wanted him to grow Monsanto crops, if I'm not mistaken, or because it was cross-pollinating with his, I can't remember the actual story. I'm actually asking the listener now to further clarify. But the thought is that he would completely denied access to any books.
Okay.
So what would end up happening in that situation if you don't have access to it?
Well, number one, it's the same thing as when you go to court and you are arrested for, say, contempt of court. And I've had this happen where you're taken downstairs, you're handcuffed, you're brought back up later, and then no mention is made of it. Like sometimes the judge will even just look at the sheriff and they'll come and grab you and they'll drag you out of there, right?
Right.
That never happened. An injury not expressed cannot be addressed, right? If they denied you access to a book while you were in jail, most people just bitch about this stuff, but did you actually swear out an affidavit that happened and send it into the courthouse? Or send it into the jail, or send it into the minister responsible for the jails? Nobody ever actually expresses an injury.
Right.
Swearing out an affidavit and sending it in somewhere and then having them not reply to it, right? We have to express these injuries, and we're not. And expressing doesn't mean that we bitch about something that happened to us on an online blog and expect a politician to read it somewhere and then take up your crusade.
Okay, right? Now the situation here is that Farmer George, his crops were infected with GMO carried by the wind. He's refused to give a plea and has been held over 90 days in solidarity.
Okay, good. Then if he had somebody there with him helping him, like an organization like we have together now, somebody would have filed a writ of habeas corpus already on the courts to find out why he's in there. Somebody could be filing a motion for him. You can write you're provided with pencils and paper in court. You could write your own motion. It doesn't have to be correct. Remember, substance is everything, right?
Right.
When they do drag him out and they bring him into court, is he getting it on the record that all this stuff has happened? Because as far as the court's concerned, you showed up there of your own free will.
Right.
They're not even acknowledging that you're being held in prison in between these appearances.
Now I have another question here. asking about the changes of the Declaration of Human Rights.
Yep.
What is your just ask about the changes of the Declaration of Human Rights. What do you have to say to that?
There's been changes?
Apparently.
That's what I have to say about that.
Continual change. So Ray in chat, he's asking what changes because he doesn't understand.
Okay,
and now I'm seeing that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I would use the original Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the one that was published in France a couple hundred years ago. Because there's a maxim of law about laws, and when there's two conflicting laws, the older and the easier to understand is to be taken as more true and accurate. Use the original Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
And now you're getting the question, are they written in stone? Which means, were they completely untainted, and was there an actual stone writing? Because obviously written in stone comes from something, because if it's written in stone, it cannot be altered. So is it set somewhere in stone then?
No, because where did the Universal Declaration of Rights come from? Some guy sat down and wrote it and then published it, and everybody said, hey, that's a great idea.
Right.
Well,
okay, now back to the farmer. Yeah. Back to the Farmer George thing. It was not about Monsanto. I'm sorry. It was a couple of traffic tickets, and afterwards he was apparently detained for assault. So I don't have enough information about this, and I apologize. I'm going to send the information to you, and you can look into it if you'd like to, and then get back to me in a private talk, and then I can update people on that. I have a YouTube right here to send you.
Okay. Somebody in his area, wherever he lives, can go down and they can file a writ of habeas corpus in that court file. You do not have to be an interested party to file a writ of habeas corpus for someone that is in jail, because it's actually our duty as men and women to protect other people. And that means when somebody's being held in jail with no family and no friends on the outside, it's actually our duty to go in to help that individual.
Yeah, and too many people. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, writs of habeas corpus are meant to be filed by anyone. Anyone who says, hey, that guy's being held without charge.
Nobody has ever taught any of these things, though. This is the idea that we are not educated. We're educated by the public system that does not want us to know anything about how we are to protect ourselves against the government, because the government's our nanny and watching out for us and will always take care of us because we obviously cannot take care of ourselves.
Yeah. And you know what? People have to get mad about this kind of stuff. You got to get worked up. What's that movie, Network? There, that where I want you to get mad.
Yes.
Yes, and that's
exactly.
true. You got to go down. You got to go down to these courthouses, and you got to take witnesses with you, and you got to walk up to one of the desks where you're going to file a motion. You got to claim a sheriff as a witness and say, go to the sheriff station. Sheriff, I have a problem. I need you to be a witness for me and stand under your oath of office as my witness. Can you do that? And he'll say, well, yes, of course. You come down to this desk with me right now where I'm filing a motion for somebody who's being held in jail without charge. And you walk down to that desk and you get fucking mad. Say, you file this fucking writ. You file the fucking thing. That's your job, public servant. This guy's being held in jail without charge, and it fucking offends me. I'm a member of the public. This is a free country. We're all free people here. Get mad at them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that you've done. You've basically you're polite until and respectful until you see that they are not, and that they try and turn the tables of stupidity on you, more or less.
Yep.
And ignorance is something that just can't be tolerated, because that's what they try to do. They either try to belittle you and make you feel like you're some kind of idiot that has no clue as to what they're talking about.
There you go. I mean, and somebody could just easily say, okay, you know what? I've got my witness right here that just saw you denying or refusing to file this writ of habeas corpus in a public court file. I'm going to have him swear out an affidavit or be my witness. I'm going to take this to Queen's Bench. I'm going to sue the shit out of the province or the state or whoever for human rights violations. I'm also sending a complaint to, and this is one I love that I haven't used yet personally myself either. I haven't had occasion to yet. I'm hoping the government wakes up before I really got to get involved in it. But send a complaint to the military, to the Provost Marshal, or to the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor General of Canada, in the form of an affidavit. Say I have a complaint about a human rights abuse, a human rights violation. You had better do something about this. Why aren't people doing this?
Because we're bred unfair.
We're too self-absorbed, too. Well, I don't want to get involved.
Well, and apathetic.
Yeah, they'll come down on me next. Good. Let them come down on me. I dare you.
Yeah. Well, that's like somebody said to me, like, are you ready to be ostracized from society? And I went, I already am. I don't believe in half the things, more than half the things that all you people do. I can't sit in a school parking lot and talk to any of the other mothers there because it just makes me want to pull out my hair. I don't like to go shopping. I don't like to consume. What I do like to consume is not something that anybody, like, that's law-abiding appreciates. There's so many things that makes me anti-conformist that how can I possibly? And I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually reading on the message down here on the point that was just made here a minute ago about if you think about it, names are made up of words and can't be properly defined, so they are irrelevant.
Right.
On a little message board down below, and actually that's a great point. I'd actually would like to make to expand on actually. We obviously need speech to communicate with one another and express injuries, but how many people have defined the words they're using in any complaint they're making against the government beforehand? This is how I define my word. This is how I define injury. This is how I define person. This is how I define this. If you have a different definition, you tell me what your definition is, and I'll tell you if I agree with you or not. Right? You have to agreement of the parties. That's what law is. That's what a definition of a word is. It's agreement of the parties. A pen isn't a pen until you both agree that's what it is. So people are going to court without even getting any agreement from their adversary of what definitions of words they're going to be using. That was in one of the notices I sent to a prosecutor a year ago, where I said, my definition of fee simple is in Black's Law Dictionary, where it says I'm the sovereign authority over my property. Do you have a different definition? Okay, well, that never went to court.
No, because they had nothing.
Their definition was different, and it's not my definition, and I told them I don't give a shit about your definition. Simple thing.
Now, another thing that's been brought to my attention is that corpus juris secundum is a secondary law of the land, which is crown or common law. Where's the first law?
The first law, it tells you right at the very, what Canada, the nation of Canada, recognizes as the first law is the first line of the Charter on Rights and Freedoms. And that says, whereas Canada is a nation founded on the principles that recognizes the supremacy of God. That tells you right there, the first law of Canada is God's law, the Bible. That's what we were founded on. The second law is the law of man. The law of man is contract law. There is only two forms of law. Common law is contract law. It's man's unlimited common law right to contract, period. One of the things you don't want to be subject to is democracy, rule of the masses. Well, 50% of the people think I'm crazy, so I guess I am. I guess I should go to jail.
Now, what about I'm reading here the caucus amicis is the first law. See, I don't understand this terminology, so this is what I'm posing out to you from a listener that's listening in.
Yeah.
And then says, but the secondary law is God's law. The first law is natural law or the law of the tribes, which is amicis. Anything to say to that? I don't know.
I would actually agree with that, but then you got to define what your dealing is with other tribes, right? Like you can get to, like all that means is if I got a tribe and this guy over here has a tribe and we get together and we're going to do trade together or we're going to have dealings together, we're going to come to an agreement or a treaty on how we're going to conduct our affairs together, how we're going to treat one another. Absolutely, right. That'd be the highest authority.
So the highest authority would be natural law and law between individual nations or tribes.
What do you want to be governed by?
The Creator's law.
Okay, then that's what you're governed by.
Myself, but I don't put myself above the Creator because I know that I was sent here brought here for a purpose.
Yeah, how could you put yourself above your Creator? That's another maximum law. The created cannot become greater than the Creator.
Yes.
Period.
And now I have here, I'm repeating, caucus amicis defined as a forgotten law left to the discretion of the common law in Black's Law Dictionary 73. This is, first law is the clan mothers of the land. And I see what he's getting here. This is why this particular listener is saying he's trying to get somewhere, and I see it now. And it goes back to the defeminization, because clan mothers were originally the ones that were instructing the chiefs of the tribals. The fact that they're, like, if you go back to ancient times, the clan mothers were running the show until the corporation came here and made it a man's world.
I've heard about this.
So this is something that he's concerned with, and he's also asked me to share his contact with you, which I will do after the show. Yep. I'm just going to put that out there so he knows, because he thinks that you can both help each other.
Yeah, if you and your people, like, and I mean this is a broad term, I'm not specifying somebody, you and your people, if anybody and their people want to simply leave and go and not be ruled by democracy or the masses and start their own nation and reintroduce their ancient laws, then do it. Just go do it. There's no law that says you cannot do it. And
now he's saying though, Dean, in big loud letters, you're my people too. You came from white tribe. You are no different than any of the other tribes of the world. So it's
Absolutely.
Not my people. It's our people, as in general.
Well, this is our planet.
Yes.
We all have to live here. We all have to live in peace and do things together to get anywhere, right? An organism at war with itself cannot survive. And government has invaded every daily aspect of our lives and gotten us to all hate one another and want to, fuck them. They get things for free from the government and, the whole 9 yards. And it's like, well, no, actually what we have to start thinking about is, why are any of us putting up with government, period?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I've been to jail
what
enough
are they taking? What are they taking away from those people in order to give them status?
Yeah, they're stealing from all of us. They're taking They're taking your heritage away from you in exchange for $100. What's worth more to you, your heritage or the $100?
And then they're saying here, TMFD is saying racism was created to divide, and this is something that I think we're all on the same page with. Being a racist and segregating yourself to one certain class or race or whatever the case is just a way to further divide us. We can't be looking at it like that. That we are just all one together.
You know what? I think we all, again, I try not to be a hypocrite. I think that everybody has the right to go do whatever they want, but we all have to work together. If somebody wanted to go, like if there was a native tribe in Canada that wanted to preserve their heritage and say, well, no, if you want to live in our reserve, you have to marry within our own people and keep our customs and traditions alive so we can maintain our heritage. Why would I ever try to hold that against somebody?
No, definitely. It's a difference between holding on to heritage and segregating for superiority, though, right?
Well, there is no superiority.
Well, that's the point, but a lot of people use the heritage thing as a superiority card. Yeah, I'm not going to put anybody into a box, because if I do that, I'll be called a racist. Now, it says here, race is a defector in international law, a defector of the tribes. And this is something that I've been studying as far as there's a difference between white tribe and white race. White tribe was true to tribal treaties, whereas white race went against all of them. I'm just touching on that because that's a part of the conversation that's going on in the chat. It's such a busy world here, and again, you guys are listening to. I have Dean Clifford on the show. This is Carrie Lee, and you're listening to Lifting the Veil on www.freethinkradio.com. And what do we have here? And the idea that we were different was a very implanted thing. Yeah, well, it's all about making us feel like we're separate, and we're not separate. And that's something that we're trying to understand more and more and more, is that we are all, it comes down to that we're all connected thing. And some people look at it as a kind of new agey way to look at it, but it's not, because we're all brothers and sisters together. It doesn't matter if we're separated by continent or color or language. That's just not the point.
No. There's nothing. Yeah, I mean, I'm even a big fan of preserving cultural heritage, race, whatever you want to call it, because if we don't, then there's going to be there is not going to be all these different wonderful heritage, different. I don't know what you want to call it, ethnicities out there. Yeah. Why destroy all that? That doesn't mean we all can't work together. We should be
understanding it.
Yeah, there you go. And that's even a moot point to everything that's going on here. The whole point is all these things are going on, all this confusion and all these things are being started by the government, so that we're all busy, concentrating on all these other problems. We're not concentrating on the fact that they're actually stealing our birthright. They're stealing from us.
And this is the whole point of today's conversation with Dean together, so that we understand that we have the power individually and that we need to take the power back.
Yep.
And I just have rage in my head now completely. But anyway,
Get angry.
With that, yeah, this is the thing. We have to be angry. We have to turn around and say, fuck you, I'm not going to do what you tell me. I'm not going to let you put me into a box. I'm not going to let you rape me of my hard-earned cash that I don't want to be wrapped to in the first place. We have to start living together for each other and basically back away from the beast. And this is one of the best, most comprehensive ways that I have found yet. I've been on the sovereign search for over a year trying to figure out anything that would bring me closer to it without understanding what it all came down to. And we have something here for you. So I was lucky enough to get Dean on the show. Dean, thank you again. It's not the end of the show, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much for taking the time, because he's a busy guy. He's running a construction business that he can barely make the time for, because what we're talking about today is just that much more important.
Yeah, I would not feel bad if I had to walk away from my construction career for the rest of my life to do something that I know is right anyways, so.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I have someone saying, Outpost 5 says, Dean has discussed defining words. Can you speak to syntax, where a word appears in a sentence can determine its meaning?
Wow, say it again.
Okay, Dean has discussed defining words. Can he speak to syntax, where a word appears in a sentence can determine its meaning?
Its intent, its meaning. Well, that is another fundamental cornerstone of law, is what was the intent of the law. So absolutely, failing a definition because you don't, and I hate to even use statutes, because statutes aren't law anyways. They're only a law if you agree to be governed by them. They're not law. You get into maxims of law, or like human rights, or even contract law, right? Like, what was the intent of what was being written? What were they really trying to say, especially taking the context of the conditions back when the law was written, like the writing of the Declaration of Independence and that kind of stuff, right? So you better believe the intent is very important when you're trying to decipher a law. But then definitions of words, I mean, everybody knows the famous Bill Clinton thing. I mean, he got off on everything that he did by asking what definition of is they were using.
Right.
What definition it is. That depends on what definition of is you're referring to. Right? Well, I think there's like 29 different definitions for the word is. That's a loophole. I don't believe in that. I think that's nonsense. But, yeah, intent is very important, but it doesn't matter. Oh boy, I could go off in a million different directions with this, but yeah, there you go.
I have another question too.
I shouldn't have to answer anybody as long as there has been no harm. Exactly. What's your standing in this matter if someone's making a claim against you? How have you been injured?
Well, his original question is, though, why should I have to participate by jumping through the hoops of the system if it's already my birthright?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You supersede... God, I want to think of the proper way to say that. The problem is okay, you guys created this estate when you were born, right? And then you did nothing with it. It's kind of been without a captain for the last 30 years. So the government just kind of takes it and starts piloting themselves and starting to steal all the equity that's in your estate. That's kind of technically what's going on. You never actually stood up and say, oh, hey, whoa, wait a minute. You know, who are you driving? No, this is my estate. Why are you meddling in my affairs? Well, you've never done it. Oh, yeah, you know what? You got a good point there. Okay, well, I'm going to do it from now on. How does that sound? And by the way, here's the terms of our business relationship if you want to have one with me. But that's not the claim being made in court. The claim being made in court is that you were operating as a public servant and you broke the rules while you were doing it. And the rules are the Criminal Code of Canada. That's the obligations a public servant has to follow when he's on duty. That's why you're in court if the government's coming after you. So that's easy to address at that point.
So basically, you're going to jump through some hoops so that they don't take advantage of you, because there's a good possibility it's going to come a time where they're going to try to. So you need to know your rights. So it's not about jumping hoops, but taking the defense.
No, taking the offense.
Or sorry, the offense. I didn't mean defense.
Yeah, we used to take the defense. You never win a defensive battle, right? They just keep coming back. I know people that can go into court and they can argue statutes like you would not believe. They know statutes better than any lawyer out there. And they go in there and they argue everything properly, and they get the judge on lies, and they just dismantle everything that's going on in there. on a defensive ground by arguing their own statutes. The only problem is what happens when you argue with Caesar in Caesar's court. I mean, he wins no matter what. He'll just change the rules, right? It's Caesar's court.
Right, yeah.
So when you start to fight offensively, you start to raise the arguments about, well, wait a minute, no, whose court is this? Oh, this is a public courthouse? Well, wouldn't that make it my court? So I guess I'm Caesar here. So I'm going to be the one administrating. I'm going to be the one dictating what is administered against my person and what is not administered against my person. Are you claiming anything to the contrary? Well, that's usually when all hell breaks loose, because you're right.
Well, yeah, you know when you're pissing them off. Because,
you know when you're right. That's when sheriffs get called.
Yeah, now someone else is asking, so when am I on duty?
Well, what's the best way to know that you worked a shift at McDonald's?
When you get your paycheck?
When you get your paycheck.
When the day's over?
When you get your paycheck. Do you normally get paid when you work? Yeah. When was I paid? And that's great. How many hours did I work that day? Because I charge $1 million an hour, so I need to know how much of a bill to send to the government. By the way, what function of government are you claiming I performed? And where's the contract? Well, guess what? If you didn't ask any of these questions before you went to court, then you deserve to be beaten when you got there. You were given every opportunity to settle the matter before you went to court. That's why you have to wait. When you show up for court the first time, you're given full disclosure. I never make any arguments until I've received full disclosure, because I want them to testify against themselves as much as humanly possible first, because that's your entire civil claim against them, wrapped up in a little package they hand-deliver to you. It's wondrous. It starts being a great thing once you understand what's going on.
Well, and that's the idea, is that we all have to understand what's going on, and as I keep saying, this is the comprehensive way to start. Dean's fantastic in that he's, you've kind of been brought to us here to say, hey, look at what I got, look at what I studied, and I don't give a shit, and I don't care what they do, and that's something that I admire. You don't care. You don't care what they think. You don't care about what they think they're going to do. It's not because you know you're in the right, and you know your rights, you know the legislation, and it's not that hard to figure out.
No, it's really not that hard.
It's just where you're looking.
Ask the right questions. Exactly. Unfortunately, the system is not equal. That's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. If everybody was on a level playing field, things would be a lot different, but we're not. When we walk into summary convictions court, which we're being forced to go into, it's a roulette game. Everything is in their favor. Everything, because we don't know what's going on. So that's not really fair. I don't like that. So I think it's my job to actually help people understand who they are when they're walking into court, so at least they got a fair hearing, a fair chance. Right?
Right.
And what the other thing people have to realize is they have to, one of the reasons I walked out of court there last year was because, and I think I speak about this on one of the videos, we now realize that even the transcripts from the court hearing are not a matter of public record. These court hearings don't actually happen. There's no record of them actually happening because people are not doing things like swearing out affidavits and entering that into the court file, right?
Right. Right.
That's one of the things I did, is every day after court, I had 3 days of court in a row, I'd go home that night, I swore out an affidavit of everything that happened in that court that day, and I had it filed back into the court record the next day before court. And that's why by the end of the third day, the judge is like all nervous and scratching her head and doesn't know what the hell to do, because now I've made it a matter of public record. Your crimes are now on the record. You can't keep this private anymore. I didn't even know what I was doing at the time, but it worked. Because it pissed me off. That's a story I never finished earlier, but when I got arrested for contempt of court the one time, and they brought me back up an hour later and this and that, and the next time I came to court, I said, oh yeah, like last time when I asked you that question, and you arrested me for contempt of court and threw me in the basement for an hour? Mr. Clifford, I don't see anything, I don't see any mention of that on the record. I don't think that happened. And that was when I went, oh, you fuckers, I know what's going on now. You ignore everything because technically it didn't happen if you don't want to see it, unless I force you to see what happened. So when we go to court, how many people are actually bringing up the fact that, well, I was actually, when I pulled over at the side of the road or whatever, I was forced to sign this document. One of the things I tell people to do now is to circle their signature on a recognizance and write right on there in red marker, I didn't sign this willingly. I was told to sign it or I'd be beaten. And then fax that back into the courthouse with instructions to put that in the court file. Do they really have a contract with you now? Can they prove it? Can
No.
they ignore that now? No, they can't. You're putting the fraud right in their face.
Okay, now explain. Okay, people have asked me about health cards and stuff like that because a health card is government-issued property. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, say that one more time. Sorry.
Health cards being governmental property, government-issued property. What do you say to the whole health card situation?
Well, what I can say is one of the things I say in the other videos there is that I can make all the presumptions I want about what's really going on behind the scenes. But usually government is kind of like one of those black boxes. It's a machine where it's got an input and an output. And the only way you can find out what's going on is by doing something on the input to see what comes out the other end. And as far as I can see, I don't think you need to fear a health card because if you're an investor in that corporation, one of the few things that they can do is provide for your health care. That's not a benefit. You're owed that. That's your right.
All right. And I don't know if this is a question. I'm just going to read it. Disclosure, where was I acting as a public servant? Give me my money and I want dental. Am I supposed to read that out loud?
Yeah, there you go. Why not? Like, seriously, people, you need to ask these questions. Contact the Crown. Ask these questions. What function of government are you claiming I was performing? And also, if you don't have a labor contract with me, where I agreed to work for $7 an hour, I bill out at $1 million an hour because you cannot force me to do anything for free. In fact, if you want me to show up for a hearing, I charge $1 million an hour up front because I won't extend you people credit anymore because you don't pay your bills ever. So the first thing I'm going to ask for when I show up at court is I'm going to ask for my check. If you don't have it, I'm leaving. And I'm going to bill you for my time anyways.
Now we have a host on the station, and she's been arrested. She's in the States. She was arrested for trying to protect a disabled child, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh wow! Okay.
And stand up for his rights. And she ended up being taken away and charged, and lies told and yada yada about her situation. I actually have an article that I can send you to look at that. And I know you don't really deal with the American side of things, but she's in a complete police state where they don't believe that she has any rights, and they will not give her any rights at all whatsoever. Is it possible to follow the same frame of mind that you're presenting here?
Absolutely. I mean, has she filed an affidavit correcting her status and an affidavit of the events that happened and put that in the court file?
As far as I know, no. She would love to pick your mind. She's just asked briefly, and I see her typing here. This is actually Pepe from the Pete and Pepe show. I'm sure she's going to have more to ask, but she's not coming on very quickly too. Can you ask Dean how you can prove in summary convictions court that acts only apply to public servants?
You can't prove anything. You put the burden of proof on your accuser. Are you claiming I am a public servant? Can you provide the payroll records? Can you provide me with a copy of the contract? Are you claiming your laws apply to me, and then a man, a woman, somebody who's not an agent of the government? Ask them. You got to phrase it all in. You can phrase everything in negative averments too before we file a motion into summary convictions there to have everything dismissed. You want to contact the Crown in advance and ask them these kind of questions, right? Are you claiming that these laws apply to me, and what is your proof? You got to remember, a Crown attorney, or it'd be down in the States, would be a state's attorney, state prosecutor. They cannot testify. They can only enter evidence and facts. Well, we know what a fact is now. A fact is agreement of the party. And evidence would be a contract. Right?
Right.
So you contact them in advance, outside of the courtroom where you're free from police and sheriffs coming in and beating you for not doing what the judge says, and you default them. I'm going to give you 10 days to produce evidence of all your claims. If you do not reply, you have agreed with me, you have no claim withstanding in fact, and I will motion the court to dismiss all charges. They don't reply in 10 days. Default them. Just write up something called a notice of default, a notice of non-response. You did not reply by my registered mail request. Send that into the court with a motion to dismiss. Say, this asshole admitted he agreed with me, he has no claim. Dismiss this. Dismiss the charges. Right? What does the Bible say about agree with thine adversary quickly, lest he drag you before the magistrate and throw you in jail? Does that mean for you to agree with everything that he claims? No. Agreement means you prove your claim. Oh, you can't? Okay, good. We have agreement. Thank you. Now fuck off. That's what you're doing in court. That's the legal version of doing that. So start doing that. Start handling things administratively and defaulting these people when they can't reply, because they can't. You provide me with facts and evidence to support your claim that I'm performing a function of government, or that you even have any authority over me. He can only have authority over you if he has a contract with you.
And Cami Cockanu is saying that there's that's where anyone can say, show me a certificate of tribal abandonment, and any color of skin can do this.
Of course.
And I know it's a different version of the same story, basically.
Yeah, keep it simple. One question. Mm-hmm. Please provide me with a certified as true copy of the contract between our parties. If you don't reply in 10 days, I'm going to take that to mean that you don't have one. Thank you. Phrase that any way you want. Or negative. You can phrase. I love negative averments when you phrase things in the negative, where I have not seen any evidence or been provided with any facts that you have a contract with me, and I believe no such evidence exists. I haven't seen anything. I don't believe anything exists. I'm going to give you the opportunity to produce one, is what that says, without you making any statements. That's just saying I haven't seen one. If you're claiming there is one, produce it. When they don't, you default them. You send a copy of that, swear out an affidavit. He did not provide me with a copy of a contract on request. We don't have one. Motion dismiss. Send that into the courts and tell them you're not showing up for a hearing because you're under no obligation to. And if you come and arrest me, I'm going to fine you $1 million for violating my human rights. If you're claiming civil rights, then enjoy jail, because that's where you're going. Because civil rights is what the government has legislated that you have.
Right, exactly.
Your human rights are inherent.
That's right. Now, can you do me a favor and give me a list? Because I have someone saying here, problem is so many of us have no experience with law, period. So even some of the most simple terms used still have no foundation in our minds due to a life of ignorance and never having to deal with the law. And we don't have the confidence to even attempt this stuff because at the end of the day, it's someone else's word. They say, what I crave is more and more examples, videos, transcript, walkthroughs, courses. It might help me and others to break through that fear barrier.
Yep.
I appreciate that, but at the same time, you have to take it from an individual stand. So, what can the individual reading materials? This is something that we need to put out there too. I know that you've named a bunch of stuff off, but let's just to wrap up, give a bit of an overview of what your reading materials were to get you going on this path and what you suggest everybody reads.
Oh boy, everywhere. I read sometimes on a Sunday when I wasn't doing anything, I would just start reading Black's Law Dictionary. I'd read a definition of a word, and when I didn't understand one of the words in the definition of another word, I would then look up that word, what the definition of that word was. So then I'd go and read that definition of that word, and then I'd find another word I didn't understand, so I'd look up that one. I came up with all sorts of shit doing that. It was just incredible. But the biggest thing people have to understand, and again, this is another Winston Shrout stuff. I really love a lot of his stuff, even though it's above almost everybody's heads. People have to understand...
Winston. And how do you spell the last name?
Shrout, and he's from down in Kentucky.
Thank you.
And he is one smart old boy. Now, people have to understand the power of an affidavit and why lawyers do not want you to file affidavits in the court. If you hire a lawyer, he's going to recommend that you don't ever do that. No, never swear out an affidavit. Well, you never have to fear an affidavit if you're telling the truth. Because if you swear out an affidavit and you're lying, that's perjury. You can go to jail for that. An unrebutted affidavit. If you swear out an affidavit and you give the other party that you serve it on a chance to rebut your affidavit and they don't, they've agreed to everything that you stated in your affidavit, which is a plain statement of facts. Now that's your foundation document for going after civil remedy or dismissing charges against you. And affidavits cannot be sworn out by a prosecutor. They cannot be. They can't be sworn out by government. An affidavit can only be sworn out by a man or a woman. And an affidavit, an unrebutted affidavit, is sovereign truth in commerce. It is sovereign judgment in commerce. You swear out an affidavit and the other party doesn't reply, it's done. You've won. Cops will not swear out an affidavit. They try to say that their statement was under oath or whatever. No, it wasn't. Says who? Usually a cop swears out their own friggin' statement. What, were they their own magistrate? They swore out their own affidavit in front of themselves? Like, give me a break. It's such nonsense. People will believe anything.
Yeah, unfortunately we will, because we've been trained to take the shoveled shit and swallow it down.
There you go. That's a good maxim of law. People will believe anything, and they don't question it.
No, because so many of them are just under the impression that indeed the government has our best interest in mind, which they obviously don't.
Even a judge, when a judge gives you an opinion in court, well, I don't think that blah, 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 you say, I don't give a shit about your opinion. Put it in writing. If you're claiming I don't have human rights, put it in writing, put your signature on that, and give me a copy of it. I don't even give a shit about his determination of what a law means. I don't give a shit about your opinion of what that statute means. It doesn't mean that to me. And a law is agreement of the parties. You're not a party. You're an arbitrator. Don't stick your nose in my business.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, we're coming to the end of the hour. It's almost 3 o'clock. One more question. Dean, have you filed the Declaration of Sovereign Rights held by Indigenous power? Ooh, Indigenous is a yucky word, but okay.
I know what I did was, and I think I told that to people there when we were looking at the new ECORs, Notice of Understanding, Claim of Rights, that some of the freemen were doing up here in Canada. We looked at that concept more than a year ago, and instead of a 40-page document where I told the government what I believe I have the right to do, I contacted the government and I let them know that they're a foreign nation. I said, you people are a foreign nation. Feel free to rebut that, but if you don't, it stands. And I'm telling you right now that I have human rights. So if you are claiming there is something that I cannot do, you got 10 days or 21 days to get back to me and tell me what I cannot do or what laws you claim I am obligated to follow. They don't reply to that, especially if it's in the form of an affidavit. An unrebutted affidavit is sovereign truth, right? It's judgment in commerce. If they don't reply to your affidavit that you believe that you have human rights and you can do whatever the hell you want as long as you cause no injury, and they don't reply to that, well, I guess that's now the truth. You can file that into any court record that any court file they try to bring a charge against you on. Sorry, I already have agreement with the government that I have human rights, and I'm not obligated to follow their statutes. Oops. Well, that court case isn't going to go very well for them now.
Right. I'm being asked if you'll help represent folks and go to court for them.
I'll help them, but your rights are your own to enforce.
Yeah. Okay. And that's understandable. And that's Pepe asking from the States. So I don't know how that would work out, or if you would even travel. But you're looking into traveling to the States to try and figure that whole thing out. So maybe there's something for you to look at.
Yep. I mean, hey, I'm always open to helping people and giving them ideas and showing them how to handle things administratively before court and settling outside of court, which is agreement of the parties. So it's the easiest stuff in the world. Law is quite simple once you break it all down. You understand what's going on. It's very simple.
Okay. Could you take power of attorney for your child and bid them out?
You are power of attorney for your child.
So that means that the birth certificate does not make them property of the state, which I said earlier.
Absolutely not. A birth certificate is almost like a claim of right. It's their claim to something. It's a liability that the government owes them something, not an obligation to obey statutes. And if people think that's the case, then send an affidavit to the government and clarify that, and see if they reply.
Okay. I would keep you on for another 2 hours, and I'm sure people would stick around to listen to you because you're absolutely fascinating and you know your stuff and you got balls, man. So we're very happy to have had you on. I'm very happy to have had you on the show. Everybody has said thank you several times in the chat on the Freethink site. Dean, anytime you want to come back onto the show to discuss, update us, give us new information, I'm a message away, and I'm sure that I'm going to be having more private conversations between you and John because I have other questions.
invite me anytime, and any questions people have, they can put it on YouTube there. Let's disseminate the information. Get me back on the show if people have more specific questions and concepts. I love talking about this stuff. The more you talk about this stuff, the more you actually consolidate your own perception of the world as well. So.
Okay, and so you've heard it. Guys, if you have questions, either send him a message to his YouTube account, and your YouTube account is Dean Clifford, is it not?
Well, DCDOTCF is my personal one, and then the Free Manitoba one is the one where all the views are on the videos there. So.
And okay, so check those two out. If anybody has any questions and you don't want to go that route, by all means, you all know you can come to me and ask me anything, and then I pass along messages because I like to get to the bottom of absolutely everything. Yep. Dean, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I know we'll be having you on again.
Hey, you know what? It's my pleasure. I like knowing that people are starting to get interested in their rights. 10 years ago, people said if I don't like Canadian law that I should leave this country. Now everybody wants to know what their human rights are, so it's flipped 180 degrees around. I'm happy about that.
And we're grateful that you're getting the message out there, because we're at a time right now where everybody's waking up to this awareness that things are not as we've seen them to be shown to us, and that it's time we like I said earlier, we got to take the power back, and the power is ours. We have to stop running scared. We have to stop living in apathy and realize that if we want to change anything, we have to be the ones to set the examples for our children so that they don't have to go through what we're going through right now. All right.
You got it.
So thanks very much. Come on the show again. You can leave the call so you can go and do the important things you need to do, love.
Wonderful. Okay, well, enjoy, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye.
All right, guys.